Hello, this is Laurel with Laurel Creates, and welcome to my channel. Today I am doing a reductive drawing with charcoal. So Alfie didn't want to let me draw today, so unfortunately he had to be removed from the recording area. So I'm starting off by using my dark charcoal stick to completely cover this small piece of paper. It's actually watercolor paper. It's cold press. It's the same paper that I use for my bullet journal setups, and it's just one of the nicer papers that I have at the moment, and I wanted to do something small, so that's what I chose. My cat's gotten a little spat and almost knocked over my camera, so sorry about that wiggling. So here I am using a kneaded eraser. This kneaded eraser, you can see, is quite black. It has been used for this purpose before, and it has absorbed quite a bit of charcoal. It's nice because it doesn't pick up a ton of the pigment, so you can see I'm getting that kind of like mid-ground, which is great for really just kind of planning out where I want the elements of this piece to be. You can see what a new kneaded eraser looks like, the nice light gray versus the dark black of that kneaded eraser. So I use this one to pick up a little bit more of that charcoal and get some more highlights in there without bringing it too bright. If I use a rubber eraser or a traditional white eraser, I'm not sure what those are called, but anyways, you can see I'm using a rubber eraser right now. It picks up a lot more pigment. It gives more brighter highlights. When doing something like this, you want to leave a lot of those mid-tones in, and you want to create a lot of variation within your piece. I don't know if you can tell yet, but I'm doing a bird skull. I used a reference for this piece that I will link in the description if you want to see, what I was drawing from. I tried to make it a little bit more on the realistic side, although it's not absolute realism for sure. This whole piece took me about an hour and 40 minutes, so I've sped that up to the 17 minutes that you see here. And throughout you can tell that I've taken up pigment where I didn't mean to, or I rework a lot of spaces, just trying to get that right shape, trying to get enough highlight in. I go in with my other charcoals to get a little bit of variation without going quite so dark. That's what this thinner charcoal here is, a little bit lighter, a lot more blendable, whereas the thicker charcoal gets that really deep black that I really wanted for the background. This reductive technique is something that I learned while getting my minor in studio art. I took a drawing class and we had to do exactly this, except on a much larger scale. This piece of paper is about 5 by 8, where The one that I did before was like a whole huge kind of like poster size. I don't know the exact measurements. We took articulated skeletons and we took pieces from different animals and put them together to create a weird creature. And I really liked doing this in school. I thought it was so fun. It was engaging. It was difficult, but not so difficult that I found myself getting discouraged. It's one of those weird things where, I guess it's not weird. It's like a lot of art where at first you're looking at it and you're like, ugh, this is really bad. This looks weird. Can't tell what it is. But you just keep working at it, keep working at it, keep looking at your reference, and suddenly it starts to come together. And then you get to add those little details, those little cracks and crevices in the skull. And it's a really rewarding process. If you haven't worked with charcoal before, I would highly recommend it. And I would highly recommend doing something like this, where you're doing reductive drawing. I find it so rewarding and it's so interesting. Instead of building up the darks, you're trying to remove to build up the highlights. So it's a different way of drawing. If you're used to, traditional drawing on white or light paper, you want to build up those shadows. So I still obviously have not perfected this technique, but it's something that I would like to do more of. And I just find skulls and bones very interesting. So I might do more of this on my channel. Maybe I'll do bigger pieces. I don't know yet. We'll see. Here is where I feel like it starts to come together a little bit more. I think right about at this point I realized that the picture that I was looking at, it has a blue background. So I actually downloaded the picture onto my computer and turned it to black and white. So that way I could really focus on the lights and darks and the shadows and the cracks and everything like that, which was super helpful. And I would definitely recommend, if you're working with black and white and you're using a reference, just downloading it and changing it to black and white can be so extremely helpful. It can even be helpful when you're working with color, because it helps you really understand where the light and the shadows are. So this tiny little eraser, I have a bunch of these because I always buy mechanical pencils. I love mechanical pencils. And the brand that I buy always comes with an extra eraser that you put in, and then you turn the pencil so I keep wanting to say scroll. That's not the right word, but you screw it and it comes up. Anyways. And usually, unfortunately, the pencil breaks or I lose it. That's probably the most common. So I have just a bunch of these tiny little erasers. So I save them, and you'll see at one point here, I go and grab a X-Acto knife and I actually cut the edges of one of these erasers to give it a point so that I can get a little bit more of fine detailing. It's really nice. I've already cut my rubber eraser. I really like to get those sharp edges. I feel like they work so well when you're doing this kind of work. I use a mix of my finger as well as blending tools, as well as just crappy paintbrushes to blend. And I I'm sure there is kind of a rhyme or reason to why I do what I do, but I feel like I do what feels right. And sometimes it's using my finger, and sometimes it's, going in with a brush or going in with a blending stump. What I personally do is I will have a blending stump for the darker blacks, and then I have a blending stump for the lighter grays. So that way, because the blending stump, the color kind of builds up on the stump. So I try not to mix those so that I can keep true to the value that I'm trying to get. So here I'm adding in some detail. I'm trying to be a little bit more loose with it. And then I actually go back in with an eraser and add some texture through erasing as well. I just wanted to get some of the scratchy texture, and the skull looked like it had veins in it. It was very interesting. I don't know. Do bird skulls have veins? I don't know a lot about skulls. So when I want to get even finer detail, I will take the blending stump and rub it on the charcoal so I can use it kind of like a little pencil, which I found was super helpful for getting those tiny, tiny details where I would have had to try and sharpen the charcoal, which you can do. You just have to rub it against some sandpaper, but I feel like that's a waste, and I feel like rubbing the blending stump on the charcoal is easier and less wasteful, so that's what I opted to do. You can see the parts where I have some trouble. I really wanted to give some shadows and definition so that you could tell what was in front of what, and not all the pieces just blended together. I think I could have pushed the shadows a little bit darker, but at this point I was kind of over it, so I started using some white charcoal just to really, really pop some of those highlights where you can see reflections on the skull in the picture, and they're just very, very white. So trying getting those little fine lines, and then sometimes blending them out, but mostly just leaving them really white. Something you want to be careful with when using white over the top of other charcoal is you really want to put it on the places that you've erased the most, not only because those are obviously the most highlighted parts, but because when you mix white with the gray, it gives you a weird color. I don't like to blend white out with the darker charcoal. It's just a very strange color. I don't like it. But, that doesn't mean that you can't do it or that you might not like it. Who knows? This piece was just, it was really fun, really relaxing, and even though I was recording, I didn't feel a whole lot of pressure. It was such a small piece that I was like, well, if this doesn't turn out, whatever. But I like how it turned out. I think it was fun. I think I overdid it on the white a little bit, but I think there's a pretty good range of values. And sometimes it's just fun to get messy and do something that is just its fun own little piece. And there's my little crow baby, little crow skull. And here's kind of some detail shots so you can see all those little details. If you enjoy this type of video, please give it a like and subscribe for more of this content. If you have any ideas of bones you would like me to attempt to draw, let me know, because that would be interesting. Yeah, so have fun, keep drawing, and spread the love, y'all. All right, bye.